Is Dak Prescott done in Dallas, or is it just another postseason overreaction? We got all that and more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you all the biggest stories from around the National Football League in less than or right around 30 minutes. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen or watch of the day every day. Don't forget, we're free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube as well. It is a Tuesday episode, whether you're listening later or you're watching or listening live over on Monday night here on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. You got Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter, myself, Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your NFL experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. So you want to go ahead and check them out today over at FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Very excited about our new partnership with them. Luke, today we have an action-packed quarterback-laden episode breaking down a couple different things. Where is Aaron Rodgers potentially headed? We'll get to that. We'll also look at Danny Dimes over in New York. The Giants want to re-sign Daniel Jones. Should they actually go about that? But first, let's start off with Dak Prescott. A lot of conversation around the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, especially over the course of the last 24 hours after their division round exit. Do you feel like Dak Prescott's time should be limited in Dallas, or are they a little bit closer than maybe folks are giving them credit for?
I'll kick that back to you in a sec, but I should mention that because of the contract that Dak Prescott just signed,
right?
There isn't a very efficient way for the Cowboys to move on from Dak Prescott. Does he have a no trade clause? I actually don't know that off.
I'm not sure if he has a no trade clause, but I do know that he's got $58 million of dead cap if they were to move on from him. So
they'd have to do post June. I mean, if they're moving on from Dak, they're blowing up the entire operation. That's fire everybody on the staff, rebuild forever. We are admitting that we're not going to be even close to anything relevant for 3 years. And Jerry Jones isn't going to do that till he dies. That's not going to be possible in Dallas until Jerry Jones is dead. So I don't think that it's feasibly in the cards. Now, academically, we can think about it, and it's an interesting thought exercise, but I don't think it's in the cards. But do you think, if all of that notwithstanding, if that were a possibility, do you think that is what would be best for Dallas, is a change at quarterback?
Best for Dallas? No. Best for Dak, though, maybe. That's the way that I would look at it, is that Dak Prescott, whether it's from the Dallas Cowboys social media team or the Dallas Cowboys themselves, deserves to at least be rescued a little bit. The Mike McCarthy system and everything that they've got going on over there, the Kellen Moore weird play calls at the end of the games, the bad clock management, all these things are going to continue to hinder what Dak Prescott can prove that he is, right? He was the oldest quarterback left in the 8 quarterbacks that were playing in the division rounds, but was only 29 years old, right? Or is only 29 years old. So now he circles back around at 30 years old. He's got a good contract ahead of him. There's a lot of reason to continue to buy into Dak Prescott in Dallas, but if I had the option and ability to get Dak out of Dallas, I think I would, because I feel like Mike McCarthy, I feel like the Dallas Cowboys offense is one that is kind of holding Dak back. I don't feel like we should be having debates about whether or not Dak Prescott is a good quarterback or a bad quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but the system that he's a part of and the lack of I don't want to call it lack of support, because look at what's around him. He's got CeeDee Lamb, he's got Tony Pollard, he's got Michael Gallup, he's got Dalton Schultz. He's got good pieces around him. But I just don't
mention Zeke.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. And so I know. And so I just feel Yeah, I don't think Zeke is back in Dallas in 2023. I can't imagine why he would be. But I think you have to go, if you're Dallas, you kind of have to make sure you're not treating Dak Prescott the way the Green Bay Packers have kind of handled the Aaron Rodgers situation, to where you kind of say, okay, you have enough. You got to go out and get him more and continue to build around him and his skill set. It's harder to do when you got a quarterback on a big old contract, right? But I think finding a way to get that done is kind of imperative for the Dallas Cowboys this offseason.
I feel like Mike McCarthy's entire career as an NFL head coach has been defined by not getting as much as you should out of your quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like, I don't know. It feels like that's a consistent pattern. I think you and I both agree that Dak Prescott and that Dallas offense, with who they have in there, should be doing more, should be getting more.
Yeah.
You should get more out of the amount of talent that they have on all levels of that offense. Now, this playoff game shouldn't be the referendum. San Francisco's defense is utterly insane.
Mm-hmm.
Good offenses will get got by that. Like, that's not going to be.
D'Amico Ryan should be a head coach next season, and it's because of performance.
And he could have been last year too, but he's biding his time and picking his spot, which I think is smart.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like with Dak, if you can get somebody who's a little bit better at getting more out of a quarterback, this is going to become a fire Mike McCarthy take. And it's not about him punting. It's not about run pass ratio or anything like that. Be as mad about that as you want. But to me, it's more about, for whatever reason, and you'd have to listen to Marcus and Landon at Locked On Cowboys to get more insight here. For whatever reason, Dak Prescott isn't doing as much as he is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has the ability to make more throws than he makes, to have better opportunities than he has.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that's not working in Dallas. And I think that there are definitely some people who sort of live in the schemer world and who are sort of the let's make the offense friendly to the quarterback, and whatever sort of ability he has will shine through. And then there's people who are like QB guys. Mm-hmm. Like, I think of the difference between somebody like Kyle Shanahan gets a lot out of his quarterbacks. Look at what he's doing with Brock Purdy. But it's not because he's finding ways to make Brock Purdy better than he is. He's finding ways to make things easier on Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And then there are people like with the Vikings, with Kevin O'Connell, former quarterback dude who understands quarterbacks and is trying to maximize what Kirk Cousins can do. And that was kind of the pitch of Kevin O'Connell coming in. Mm-hmm. I think maybe a kind of guy like the latter guy might be good for Dallas, but I think the way the Cowboys are constructed right now can contend if they're smarter on Sundays. And right now, they're not smart enough on Sundays consistently to get what they need to get. And that's a problem. I want to fix the Cowboys, not like, if I'm Dak Prescott, I want to fix the team I'm on. And, as much power as I have to do that, not necessarily go to another team that's probably got its own, host of problems.
You're right. You end up somewhere else with a defensive head coach or whatever that value is to you, right? That isn't that person.
Like, I'm not going to Houston. That's not going to help.
Right. Like, it kind of makes you wonder, like, if Jerry Jones was mad enough that he wanted to make a change here after, I think it's like 12 straight postseason appearances without reaching an NFC Championship game or something like that, or without winning an NFC Championship game.
Only a couple of which are on Mike McCarthy, but I digress.
Right. And then you look at kind of the frustration that can build over that time, though, and then Mike McCarthy now coming up short a couple of years in a row. If there's a chance that Jerry Jones, if he's mad enough about all of that, that instead of moving on from, doing anything drastic around the roster, he wants to improve the roster, but potentially makes the change at Mike McCarthy, and then goes after a Ben Johnson, or I'll say Sean Payton. I don't know that Sean Payton is really the quarterback developer, though. Sean Payton is a good coach that can get great stuff out of your quarterbacks, right? But is he a developer? I don't think that we've seen anything to prove that so far, because he spent most of his career with somebody that was developed and ready to go in Drew Brees. And
in making things easier on him when Brees' ability started to wane.
That was my big thing for him, was that he evolved with the capabilities of his quarterback. You got to find somebody that's going to be able to do that for Dak Prescott as well, if you want to keep Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys competitive. That's my thing. That's my thing.
And the last thing here, reasonable chance you lose Kellen Moore this offseason to a head coaching gig.
Yeah.
And how big of a part of all of this is that? And if Kellen Moore leaves, what I think is it's going to take one more season like this, one more failure to get to the NFC Championship. Maybe Kellen Moore leaves and the offense falls apart and they miss the playoffs or something. If you have a season like that in 2023, then I think Jerry Jones does something. But I don't think. I mean, he's already kind of confirmed that they're not going to make any changes on staff.
Right.
But if something like that goes down, that's what I could see, especially if you lose Kellen Moore and then it is like exposed, how much he was contributing if you can't replace him.
Get them a fun wide receiver in the draft.
Absolutely. But hey, look, there are still some teams that are playing football, 4 of them to be precise. And if you want to bet on them, head on over to FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. It is our new sports betting partner at Locked On, and we're super stoked on that. If you're new to FanDuel, then I got some great news for you. You can get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, parlays, props, all sorts of things, point spreads, everything you're always looking for. Plus, you can even combine your bets, like I said, with a same game parlay. Get really into a specific game, especially if you're a fan of one of the 28 teams that is not playing this weekend and you're looking for a stake. That's the kind of thing I always like to do. So don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet. Get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, y'all. Continuing on with this episode of Locked On NFL. We appreciate you so much for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out your favorite local teams Locked On show as well, whether it be NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, or of course, we have dozens of college shows covered here as well. Luke, we discussed Dak Prescott. Let's move over to another quarterback within the NFC East, Joe Shane, and the New York Giants brass kind of doing their end of season pressers today or on Monday. And one of the things that came about with that was a desire to re-sign Daniel Jones and also an expressed hope of keeping Saquon Barkley in New York as well. Is this a good move? Because I definitely have my reservations around Daniel Jones for sure. So is this something that they should want to do, that you really want to commit to a second contract with this guy?
I haven't been big on Daniel Jones since he got drafted. I don't know. I never understood
if it has anyone. You know what I mean? Aside
right.
from the Giants.
And I think the Giants worked really hard to hide what Daniel Jones couldn't do this year. If you look at the passing charts and stuff, if you look at the depth of target and all that, it was a lot of point guard, dish it out. Daniel Jones can run, so we'll make sure that we have that as an option. He kind of was his own check down. That's what mobile quarterbacks can be. We'll put some read options in there, but against Daniel Jones and the Giants, you don't have to defend the full field, and I feel like committing to that long term is limiting. And the joke around the Vikings sphere is that our defense was so bad we tricked the Giants into thinking Daniel Jones was better than he was. Did that happen though? Like, that might have really happened because he looked electrifying in that wild card game. We fired a coordinator over that. So did Daniel Jones really prove this longevity? I don't know. I think that was just a bad defense losing out to an incomplete offensive strategy. But I think you're always going to just break like water on a rock when you come into a game against a Philadelphia, or if they had to play Dallas or San Francisco. I think the same thing happens to the Giants in a playoff game. And there's always going to be that team that knows how to defend a short game kind of offense, that knows how to play the read option, that can do the simple stuff like that. And you're not going to win a Super Bowl without having to figure out a way to beat those guys. And if you don't trust your quarterback to do what it takes to beat those guys, I don't know about going long-term with that guy. But hey, that's I guess that's why I don't get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I look at the Nick Sirianni offense. I look at the Brian Daboll offense. They're very similar. Obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles have some really, really good weapons. They've got AJ Brown. They've got Devontae Smith. They've got Dallas Goedert, all that. And then so, you look beyond that, you look over with the New York Giants, and one of the things that makes them so different, obviously, the weapons that they have on offense, but they still built a pretty effective offense in 2022. So I understand where the Giants look at Daniel Jones and say, okay, there's something that we can do here, right? Like there's something we can build off of Daniel Jones in a second contract or in a second, stint or whatever, or that he took some steps forward and all that. I 100% get it, but I do think you have to continue to really focus on what you can put around Daniel Jones as they move forward, right? They went out there, they got Kenny Golladay, they went out there, they had Kadarius Toney, they got Darius Slayton, they went and got Kyle Rudolph. Like they built up this offense so that if Daniel Jones couldn't run it, then they can plug another quarterback in there to run it. And Daniel Jones did a pretty good job running it. Now, what's the difference between Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts is that Jalen Hurts can make the better throws, in my opinion. I don't look at Daniel Jones as being somebody that's a full-on three-level threat. His deep ball accuracy isn't the same. Yeah, he has the ability to be his own check down, but he's not one of those guys that's going to be able to really kind of fully be that mobile quarterback, right? He's just going to pick up those yards in emergency situations and then, blast off a big run every now and then and hope that he doesn't trip over his own 2 feet when he's on his way down the field. But there are those moments where he can do all of that. But I think the thing that sets those two offenses apart are the weapons that are around the quarterback. And then, of course, the quarterback's ability to be that 3-level threat. Can you make every pass on the NFL field? And it's pretty clear that Daniel Jones can't do that consistently enough for you to not need the bigger weapons around him. So you get the weapons around him, and then maybe you feel better about that. But what's the second contract for Daniel Jones look like? Because as we've learned time over time again in the NFL, or time after time again, is that you sometimes get paid as a quarterback based upon when your contract is renewing, not necessarily based upon your actual performance as a quarterback, right? Sometimes it's just as much about timing, how much money you get, than it is about your actual performance. And so with him sort of being in this category of a mid-tier quarterback, what does a second-year deal look like for him, and what is overpaying? Because I dare say those definitions aren't too far off of one another. But are you going to find a better quarterback in the near future, in the time to be able to capitalize the momentum that you've had by making the division round, competing within a very, very tough NFC East this year, and coming out on the right side of things, except for, being able to advance to the NFC Championship game? And so I think the thing that the Giants kind of have to ponder here is, what are the options other than Daniel Jones? And is it better to pursue that option than to just give Daniel Jones a second contract? And I think it's probably better for them just to give him a second contract and ride it out and hope that he continues to develop, as much as I'm not a believer in Daniel Jones.
He has to grow into something that we have not seen him be yet. And I have my skepticisms about his ability to do that. And I don't know. It feels like the QB carousel this offseason is going to be humming.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we're going to start living in a world where the QB carousel hums a little bit more than it used to. I don't know. I just,
how do you feel about that, by the way? Do you like that, the quarterback mobility? Yeah. I think it's fun. I enjoy it. It's as somebody really covering the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's my perspective, right? I mean, as a team, it sucks, when you've got somebody that you're trying to keep in the building, that it's, that much harder to do it. Yeah. But I don't know. I look around, if the Giants could get their hands on Lamar Jackson, they do it.
Changes everything. Changes everything.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
I think Brian Daboll has already demonstrated an ability to change his offense around his players. So he can 100%. Go run, he can put in something that is more tailored to Lamar Jackson, less tailored to Daniel Jones. But at the same time, I don't know, you mentioned Jalen Hurts, and I just started thinking, what does Daniel Jones do that Jalen Hurts can't do? And if you can't answer that question, and I don't have a great answer to that question, maybe I'm just ignorant, but if you can't answer that question, how can you go long-term into a division where you at best have the third best quarterback?
Right. This is what we watched the Los Angeles Chargers quickly pivot away from when Patrick Mahomes when everyone realized that Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes. They didn't ride it out with, an aging quarterback in Phillip Rivers who had another year or two left in him. They went with the young guy that they liked in the draft in Justin Herbert. Right. And now, they're still getting in their own way. Don't get me wrong. And there's still things to fix there, but they're closer than the Las Vegas Raiders are after maybe investing in Derek Carr for a year too long. They're a step closer than where the Denver Broncos are, investing in a newer but aging quarterback in Russell Wilson. That's what you're trying to see, or what you want to see the New York Giants do. But what are their real options there? That's the challenging part
Derek
for me.
Carr.
What are their options? Their option is to go and get the Derek Carr. You know what I mean? Whatever. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
You put Derek Carr in New York. I mean, I don't know. It felt like they had it built so perfectly. Like Kadarius Toney, watching what he's doing in Kansas City now is like, what? That was what he needed.
What could have been?
Needed Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney. Get him a big body Kyle Rudolph dude who's, just going to be your red zone guy, face mask or higher, easy peasy. What happened?
Yeah, it just didn't pan out. It just simply didn't pan out. So we'll see. If they want to commit to him, they'll commit to him. But I think if you commit to Daniel Jones on a second contract, you have to get Saquon Barkley back. You have to keep Saquon Barkley in the building.
You need somebody who is supremely talented. They did great with, Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins. They got a lot more than you expected out of him, but you need somebody that you can walk into a game that defenses say, crap, we fear this guy.
Yep. And hopefully they can find another one of those guys at pass catcher too. So, but we'll see.
Well, we got to talk about the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers and what in the world is going on with that. I mean, we have to have this conversation every offseason now, pretty much. And that's the way that they've structured things. So we'll get into what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, what the Packers options are. And I don't know, maybe we can wildly speculate on where he's at, but whoever knows where his head is at. So that's all coming up.
All right, y'all. Thanks so much for being here with us here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Luke, I say we get directly to the wild speculation around Aaron Rodgers. I say we don't waste any time at all. We dive right into it. Aaron Rodgers right now had built a contract with the Green Bay Packers, kind of akin to somebody that we've already mentioned, Derek Carr, who will also be on the move, or who will be on the move this offseason. But he's got, a low base salary. There's signing bonuses, there's roster bonuses and options and things like that can all kick in that could equate to $99 million of dead salary cap. But obviously there are ways to move some of that money, things like that, post June 1 transactions, all of those things, get that bonus on somebody else, all that.
Yep.
So with the way that this contract is structured, it's not inconceivable that the Green Bay Packers could move Aaron Rodgers and trade Aaron Rodgers if there's a package out there. So is Aaron Rodgers a Green Bay Packer in 2023, or is he playing somewhere else?
So my perspective on this tells me he's either a Packer or he's hosting Jeopardy.
Interesting.
I think there's, not literally, but he's either a Packer or he retires. I don't think that there's a world where he goes somewhere else because the trade compensation it would take, according to various reports, it would take multiple firsts to get Aaron Rodgers in your building. And you'd have to take on a contract, and the contract is sort of it's a big burden for both the Packers and the team trading for him. The team trading for him would get him at a reasonable, at a really low price in 2023. And that's why you would have to pay 2 firsts. He would cost less than $16 million in the immediate next year. But then you take a huge bonus vests.
Yep.
And you essentially have to either pay him a ton until he's well into his 40s, or eat a huge dead cap hit at some point, and essentially you've got to blow up your books. And the Packers probably, if they do that, they're probably blowing up their books too, which is why it also caught, if you're going to basically send us into rebuild mode, we need a bunch of picks, right? You got to give us everything. So it's really hard for me to see a team that's so close to contending. Think about the Niners, right? What if the Niners went and put Aaron Rodgers in the offense that is currently in the NFC Championship with Mr. Irrelevant as a rookie? That would be super lethal, right? And by the way, that's my favorite Derek Carr landing spot. That would be gnarly.
Oh, that would be so good.
But either that or Detroit. But The problem is, A, the Niners don't have the picks to do that because of Trey Lance. And B, they have a really, really complete roster with a lot of expensive players on it. And so making the money to do that also doesn't seem prudent. They probably could figure out a way if you really tried, but it doesn't seem like the most efficient way to go. And they've got guys under contract that they already like anyways.
Yep.
So I guess my question becomes, who is both in the place where mortgaging the future to get 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, and by the way, he declined a lot this year. Mm-hmm. So 2 years of whatever's left of Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Like, who wants to do that? And also is in a space where they've got the cap space and they've got the sort of resources to make it happen. You need a whole bunch of draft picks, you need a whole bunch of money, and you need to also have a really good roster. Who has that?
Nobody. The Green Bay Packers. But they, you know what I mean? Like you're either that. So that's, I completely agree with you. He's either a Packer or he's gone, because nothing else really makes sense. The only other team that I could think that gets desperate enough to maybe potentially make a move for Aaron Rodgers could be the New York Jets. And the only reason why I mentioned the New York Jets is because like they have the draft compensation in the near future that they can move on from. They have a lot of young talent on the roster, but I don't think they have a loaded enough roster to win with Aaron Rodgers. If the Green Bay Packers don't have a loaded enough roster to win with this version of Aaron Rodgers, then the New York Jets certainly don't either. And I think that's fair to say, right? Garrett Wilson's great.
Do they think they do?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Do they think that they do though? And so if they do believe, like if they convince themselves that they do, then that could be a route that they end up going. But, when I think about the places that, look, Aaron Rodgers is going to be 40 years old next season. Do you really want to give up your near future for the rest of Aaron Rodgers' future? That's basically what you're doing, right? Wherever Aaron Rodgers, if he's not playing for the Green Bay Packers next season, wherever he ends up will be where he plays until the end of his career, which could be 1 or 2 years. So are you really willing to give up 3 years of your mortgaged future, or mortgaging 3 years of your future, to get 1 or 2 years of Aaron Rodgers? That doesn't make sense to me. Now, the interesting thing is that if Aaron Rodgers comes back in 2023, when the calendar year turns over to 2024, the Packers, there's an out in that contract, and it's less than $25 million of dead cap to move on from, which I know sounds like a lot, but when you think about Aaron Rodgers, when you think about quarterback dead cap monies, you think about escalating salary caps, all those other things, less than $25 million, 24 point whatever million dollars, that's not a bad deal. But where do they turn after that? Because if Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay in 2023, and then Jordan Love says, well, then in that case, I'm out of here, because there's 10, 12 different teams that are going to be looking for quarterbacks this offseason, it feels like. Then where are the Green Bay Packers left after that? Like, their future is kind of tough here. Like, you almost wonder, do you go to Aaron Rodgers if you're the Green Bay Packers and say, listen, we want to turn the page here, start with Jordan Love, so you should probably just retire. like, do you start having that tough conversation with him? I know that's not exactly the way that it would go, forgive me, but
I mean, it's got to be up to him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be up to him.
If he's crazy enough to still think he can play, then he's going to play.
Well, he thinks he can still win an MVP.
Yeah.
He's
NFL players have to be that insane to make it to the level that Aaron Rodgers has.
That's right.
And I think the Packers would be closer. My understanding, at least from talking to like Peter, Locked On Packers and all that, is that they would be more willing to put the 5th-year option on Jordan Love, franchise tag him, do stuff to keep him in the building until Aaron Rodgers goes. But that becomes very funny if they have Jordan Love on a 5th-year option with Aaron Rodgers still in the building on a quarterback 5th-year option, and then franchise tagging a quarterback and all that.
It's a lot of money.
Immediately becomes like a very silly idea, but I think they're more willing to do that than they would be to trade Rodgers away and sort of blow everything up, especially for a guy like Love, who is very much still developing. And
that's why I think
look 250 miles to the south to see what happens to a developing quarterback when you don't have the right pieces around him.
Sure.
I'm sure the Packers are acutely aware of what's been happening to Justin Fields in Chicago, and wouldn't want to do that to Jordan Love if they still feel like he needs work. And their behavior tells me that they don't exactly, this is not exactly, trading away Sam Bradford because you got Carson Wentz killing it in camp,
Right. I just can't see it, man. Like, I can't see the logic behind franchise tagging or giving a fifth-year option to a quarterback that you've never watched play football.
I mean, was he play like 4 games?
Yeah, and practice.
A bunch of them were fourth quarters with the twos in, like
right,
and preseason.
Like that would be knowing that you also have Aaron Rodgers on a massive contract. Like he's still taking up a large percentage of your salary cap, right? And then you give a franchise tag over or a fifth-year option over to this quarterback. That's so much money to invest in the quarterback position. That's wild to me. Now, that changes, of course, with rising in salary cap, just like we talked about a second ago. But I have a really hard time seeing that reality, like seeing that be a good idea. I mean,
and if anything does happen with Rodgers, it happens after June 1st because of the way the contract works 100%. Out. They're going to want to spread out all that dead cap burden over a couple of years, which means this is a training camp thing to me. This is not something where you strike a deal and everybody agrees to do it after June 1st. To me, this is someone's quarterback gets hurt in camp and they're going to go for it. And that's the kind of deal, that's what I think. That's where I think we end up. And again, the circumstances there, like a lot of planets have to align for there to be an opening for a team that's in that much of a panic with that many resources to give and everything is working. And Jordan Love has to be good enough for the Packers to feel okay about it. Like all of that stuff it's a lot of planets aligning. It's like both of the options for Green Bay feel like really difficult to fathom. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't retire in the next couple of years, they're kind of going to be forced to do one of a couple of very, very silly things.
Yeah. Wow. The future in Green Bay
is interesting. And if they can get out of that, if Jordan Love is even viable, I think that Green Bay kind of has a chance to like pivot through this. And even if they don't stick with Love, they can at least kind of remain somewhat relevant in the meantime and try to figure out their next chapter. But if Jordan Love is not their guy, if he doesn't end up, being able to turn out after sitting on the bench for 3 years, if this is a Brock Osweiler situation where he sits forever and then he just never pans out, yike.
That's our yike of the week, everybody.
A yike that I hope and pray for.
Of course. And understandably so. Y'all, this was a fun one. It's always fun to talk quarterbacks and all of the weird stuff that can happen over the course of the offseason. It's going to be a very, very entertaining offseason here through 2023. Of course, the playoffs still continue as well. Make sure you go and check out FanDuel.com/lockedon to get involved in some of the odds, lines, props, all that stuff around the NFL playoffs. But don't forget, we're here with you every single Monday through Friday here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Tony and James going to have you covered tomorrow. Luke and I will be back next week. But we appreciate y'all so much for making Locked On NFL a part of your day, for making us your first listen, for being here with us. Don't forget to go and check out your favorite local shows as well here on the Locked On Podcast Network, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team